نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا وسندنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فيه رجال يحبون أن يتطهروا والله يحب المطهرين صدق الله العظيم. We begin by sending salutation, salawat upon the best of creation sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Join me, Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina ulana Muhammadin wa ala ali sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam ma'adanil judi wal karam wa alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. Today, taking advantage of the fact that I see many more young faces, many of the students from school, from colleges, universities will be present due to it being half term, and tying it into our subject, our continuous read of the Ihya Ulum of Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah. Last week we began describing the levels of Taharah. One is the physical Taharah, the wudu that you must do. The purification of these limbs, the hands, the face, the arms, the feet, the mash of the head, which is a necessity for every living Muslim. Then we mentioned that the second level of Tahara is that you not only clean these limbs, but you purify them from sin. Then the third level of Tahara, now that the limbs are clean, the arms, the eyes, the ears, the feet, the hands are pure from sinning, this then leads you to the third daraja, which is the purification of the heart. When the physical limbs are no longer committing sin, now you can divert all attention towards the state of the heart and purification of the heart. And the fourth daraja, as the Imam described, is for the Anbiya, where you see no one but Allah. You isolate your feelings from this dunya and people around you, and you focus just on Allah, which is only possible for the Anbiya alayhimus salam. I will go through some more basics. Like I said, because it's half term, there are many things I want to share with the young ones. And many times, they shy away from discussing these issues and these matters. And in advance, from the elders, I ask your apology if you may think, Hafiz, this isn't the right place to be mentioning these things. But unfortunately, I've had situations where people well into their early 20s have never heard of these masail, of these issues. And I don't want anyone from my congregation at least be suffering from such due to ignorance. So the first thing before we go into wudu, which is from the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I will want to question everyone that's listening to me right now, whether we have done this or not. Imam describes, as upon the authority of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that before you begin your wudu, فَيَنْبَغِي أَنْ يَنْوِيَ عِنْدَ السَّوَاكِ تطهير فمه لقراءة القرآن وذكر الله تعالى في الصلاة. He describes that even before you begin your wudu, the first thing that you should always want to do is to cleanse your mouth. Your oral hygiene comes even before your wudu. Because if the oral hygiene is not clean, agar muh saaf nahi, daan saaf nahi hai, and oral hygiene is something that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam he considered heavily. I remember when I was teaching the younger kids our Qabr book, Islamic studies that we teach, the young 7-8-year-olds, we counted about daily Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would brush his teeth up to 15 times a day. No toothpaste, of course, we're talking about dry brush. And the ulama have said using a dry brush is equivalent to using a miswak. The ideal use is that you use a miswak, which can be used whilst fasting as well. Many people may have that question. As long as a miswak is tasteless, has no taste, then it can be used whilst you are fasting as well. And the Messenger ﷺ would use the dry brush up to 15 times a day. Oral hygiene was impeccable, was so strong. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Salatun ala athari siwak afdalu min khamsin wa sab'ina salatan bi ghayri siwak." Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you perform 2 rak'at. Don't nafli ada karne hain. Like many of us, you will come here now for Jumu'ah. You're going to perform 2 rak'at behind the Imam. They're only 2 rak'at. Had you performed these 2 rak'at with the use of siwak at home or a dry brush at home, look at the words. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, "Afdalu min khamsin wa sab'ina salatan." You don't just get the reward of 1 salah, but 75 times the reward by reading a salah, having used your miswak before the salah. 75 times the reward. 75 गुना ज्यादा सवाब मिलता है अगर मिसवाक करके इंसान नमाज की तरफ आए. How many of us have taken that reward today? हम में से कितने हैं जिन्होंने आज, even if it's a dry brush or a miswak, I alhamdulillah keep one in my car. Because I know when I'm coming to the masjid, I'm going to drive here, use a miswak before you come in, job done. Anything you do, and as the Imam says, that it is most preferred, فَيَنْبَغِي, it's most preferred, أَنْ يَنْوِيَ عِنْدَ السِّوَاكِ تَطْهِيرَ فَمِهِ لِقِرَاءَةِ الْقُرْآنِ, that you want and you desire that my mouth smell good, the fragrance be there. We know the malaika are very sensitive, let alone humans. Somebody with a bad breath, nobody wants to be around him. You avoid that individual. Or if you do, you stand at a distance because you know the odor gets to you. Malaika are more sensitive than us humans. Hadith says that you are not to come to the masjid if you've had fresh onion. And these matters are deeply discussed by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and this hadith upon the authority of Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasallam said, "Lawla an ashqa ala ummati la amartuhum bis sawaki inda kulli salat." Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, had I not feared that using the siwak or a dry brush would become difficult for my ummah, then I would have made it wajib upon my ummah that for every salah it would have become wajib that you do your miswak or you do a dry brush before you stand for salah. Lawla an ashukka ala ummati. Had I not seen it considered to be a burden, who was he talking about? Was he talking about the Sahaba? No. They were regular users of miswak. They were the first people that saw the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam using miswak on a daily basis, around 15 times a day. You ask, how is that possible? He would use a miswak before each salah. That's 5. Before his meals, at least 2 meals he would have. That's 7. And he would take regular naps during the day, 3 naps at least. And before sleeping and after waking up. So that's 6 there. You do the math. And before he would go to any of his wives, before he would come to the masjid, he was regularly using and cleaning his teeth all day long. And look at the reward. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, use a miswak عند الوضوء, when you perform wudu, then come to the masjid or go to your prayer mat. You'll get 75 times more the reward. Allahu Akbar. This is something every one of us, as we are approaching Ramadan, and it ties in very well, where you're not going to be using toothpaste, because there's every chance that if the toothpaste goes down your throat, your fast is broken. So you have a week from now at least minimum to get into the routine, go to the local shops, buy a miswak, or get into the routine of using a dry toothbrush. You know, if you use toothpaste 15 times a day, I'm sure your parents are going to be questioning where is it all going. So start to use a dry brush at least to keep up with the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, "Man zakara Allah inda wudu'ihi طهر الله جسده كله. When an individual remembers Allah Rabbul Alameen, and the du'as that we mentioned a week ago, these du'as are such that the Prophet ﷺ said, whomever remembers Allah, mentions Allah's name when making wudu, he's not only cleaning his limbs, his arms, the hair, the feet or the face, balki what happens? طهر الله جسده كله. Allah Rabbul Alameen purifies his entire body. Performing wudu is an act where the Messenger ﷺ asked his Sahaba, they were sat in a congregation, "O my companions, what's your opinion about that individual who takes a shower 5 times a day? Would you expect any dirt to be on his body? If he takes a shower 5 times a day, and the example given is that he lives next to a stream of water, so 5 times a day he goes for a dive, comes out, puts the clothes on, would he have any germs on him, any dirt?" Sahaba said, "Ya Rasulullah, that's not possible. How would that happen?" Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, an individual who performs his wudu 5 times a day is just like that individual who takes a shower 5 times a day. He'll have no sin on him. This is why طهر الله جسده كله. Allah Rabbul Alameen purifies his entire body. And then the next aspect of Tahara, which I've already mentioned, that I will take advantage of because I see so many young faces. Before we even go to perform wudu, we will go to relieve ourselves. Even that in itself, every one of us needs to be aware of. The hadith describes, in Sahih Bukhari, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam was passing by the 2 graves. Famous narration, many of us have heard, but it serves as a powerful reminder. And I will add a contemporary element to it as well. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam passing by 2 graves, and he stopped. And if I go into the detail, the camel that he was riding on started jerking. And the companions are looking, what's happened? Why is the camel suddenly out of sync in its movements? It's not behaving normally. What's happened to it? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, my camel has recognized that the graves that we are passing by, these 2 graves are being punished. Not him sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Look, this is the power of and the barakah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the animal he rides on, that animal has so much knowledge, it's aware what's happening under the ground and can even tell you why they're being punished as well. This is the barakah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Ya Nabi Allah, why are they being punished? Iftina mimma azab al-qabr. Ya Nabi Allah, tell us, why are these people being punished in the grave? Nabi sallallahu wasalam qala sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, min athar al-bawl. Because they would not protect their body or their clothes from the droplets of urine. In another hadith, Nabi sallallahu wasalam said, tanazzahu min al-bawl, fa inna amata azab al-qabr min. Tanazzahu, protect yourself. You have to be vigilant of when you relieve yourself that no drops of urine splash back at you. And many of our youngsters are not cautious when it comes to this. And with that comes a matter of istinja and istibra. Istibra would probably never been, you've probably never heard of that term for the youngsters. You've heard of istinja, what's istibra? Istibra is to take your time, making sure every last drop of urine has come out. And then you stand up and move away from the cubicle. Unfortunately, if you rush your way, you've not achieved istibra. The final last drops, and this is predominantly a problem with men. And if the last few drops have not come out, you may stand up, move towards the basin and start to perform your wudu. But last drops of urine come out, your wudu is not even done. And it's got on to where? Your clothes, underwear, and now you're going to wear that for the entire day. Not a single salah is being accepted. And the reason why I mention this, and it came as a shocker to myself first. There was a young individual going on Umrah about 2-3 months ago and said, Imam Sahib, I've got a question. Gee, what's the masala? Imam Sahib, I get drops of urine. So what should I do when I'm in the state of ihram, I'm doing umrah? What do I do? And I said, what have you been doing all your life? That's the first question. And he said, Imam Sahib, I've not done anything about it. How old are you? He's in his mid-20s. I said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Like over 10, 12 years have gone by, you've never diagnosed or considered that you get drops of urine. And you only asked me this question before you're going umrah. What would happen to your 12 years of salahs and ibadat if for every time you went to the bathroom, you did not achieve istibra, which is complete fulfillment, knowing that every last drop of urine has gone? If you've not achieved that, and remember, many of our young kids, youngsters, are not going to ask this mas'ala from their father or their mother. Neither would they have the courage to ask their imam, local imam, because we're not in touch. People don't come forward anymore. We do have the imam line, but those that do pick up the phone and ring, I now share that message back to the community. It's a common problem amongst men. But this is the caution that ulama have gone to, and there are entire chapters as part of istinja, that you achieve istibra first. Then you do your istinja, you cleanse yourself with water, and then you make your way towards wudu. And as using this system described by Imam Al-Ghazali, then you use your miswak. Then you will do dhikr of Allah. Another question I was asked this week, an individual rang me, Imam Sahib, you mentioned all these du'as that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite during wudu. Can we recite them in the bathroom? Many of us, majority of our households, you've got the toilet and then you've got the basin right next to it, within one room, one cubicle. So can we recite these ayat and these du'as in the bathroom? Because you're in the bathroom, you're in the toilet. Answer is yes. But only once you flushed and the dirt has gone. Once the dirt is gone, that area is no longer dirty. Ulama say then quietly in your mind you are allowed to recite those du'as. But if the dirt is still there, then you're not to recite anything. Allah Ta'ala malki tawfiq ta farma. Jazakallah.